The galactic zoological gardens of Praxian 7 stretched across 3 floating platforms, each dedicated to showcasing the universe's most fascinating creatures. Tourists from 100 worlds wandered through transparent tunnels, marveling at bioluminescent Venusian jellies and crystalline beetles from the Andromeda Rim. But today, the largest crowd had gathered at Sector 9, the newest and most controversial exhibit in the zoo's 1,000-year history. Deathworld predator, human, Homo sapiens, extreme caution. The sign glowed in 12 languages, each translation pulsing with warning colors. Behind reinforced trilithium glass stood Erin McCarthy, a 23-year-old xenobiologist from Earth, wearing cargo pants and a faded university hoodie. She sat cross-legged on an artificial grass platform, reading a battered paperback book, completely ignoring the hundreds of alien eyes watching her every move. Stanley Chen, her colleague and fellow exhibit, was doing pull-ups on a bar they'd installed in the corner. His t-shirt was soaked with sweat, muscles straining with each repetition. 47, 48, he counted, breath steady despite the exertion. A small Quillarian child barely 3 feet tall with iridescent purple skin, and for delicate eyes pressed his face against the glass. His name was Zixyler, though his parents called him Zixi. He'd been terrified when they first arrived, but now curiosity overwhelmed his fear. "Mama," Zixi whispered, tugging on his mother's flowing robes. "The female one isn't doing anything scary. Stay back, Zixi," his mother urged, her translator collar rendering her clicks and whistles into galactic standard. "Remember what the guide said. They're from a Class 12 Deathworld. Gravity 3 times ours. Atmospheric toxins. Mega predators. These creatures evolved to survive." Stanley dropped from the bar, landing with a thud that made several spectators jump backward. He grabbed a water bottle and walked over to Erin, flopping down beside her. "I'm so tired of being the zoo animal," he muttered. Erin didn't look up from her book. "We volunteered for this, remember? Cultural exchange program. Show the galaxy that humans aren't dangerous. Be ambassadors." She turned a page. "Though I'm pretty sure we're just making it worse. 48 pull-ups, and they look like I'm about to rampage. To be fair, Stanley, you do kind of look like a predator when you work out. The whole apex hunter vibe," he snorted. "I'm a botanist who can bench press 300 pounds in Earth gravity." Their conversation was interrupted by a timid tapping on the glass. Both humans looked up to see Zixi, now separated from his mother, standing alone at the barrier. His fur eyes were wide with wonder rather than fear. Erin smiled and stood up, approaching the glass slowly. The crowd murmured nervously. Stanley followed, hands in his pockets, deliberately casual. Zixi didn't run. "Hello there," Erin said softly. The translation matrix embedded in the exhibit walls converted her words instantly. "What's your name?" "Zixyler," the child stammered. "But everyone calls me Zixi." "Hi, Zixi. I'm Erin. This is Stanley." Stanley crouched down to the child's eye level and waved. "Hey, buddy." Zixi's crystalline fingers touched the glass. "Are you really from a death world?" Erin and Stanley exchanged glances. This was the question everyone asked, usually from much farther away. "Well," Erin began carefully, "we're from a planet called Earth. Some species in the galaxy think it's pretty dangerous, but to us it's just home. But the sign says you're predators." Zixi's voice rose with excitement rather than fear. "It says your world has poison air and crushing gravity and creatures that can eat you." Stanley chuckled. "Okay, so Earth does have oxygen in the atmosphere, which is apparently super corrosive to a lot of species. And yeah, our gravity is stronger than most places, but we evolved there. It's normal for us. What about the predators?" Zixi asked. "Do you hunt them?" "Sometimes we're the ones being hunted," Erin admitted. "We have these animals called bears, massive creatures, some over 700 pounds, with claws and teeth designed to tear through meat. And sharks in our oceans, tigers in our jungles, crocodiles in our rivers." Zixi's eyes grew impossibly wider. "And you live with these monsters?" "We've learned to coexist," Stanley said. "We're smart. We build things. We use tools. We work together. But you're predators too, right?" Zixi pressed his face closer to the glass. "The sign says you have binocular vision for tracking prey." And you can run for hours without stopping. And persistence hunters, Aaron confirmed. Our ancestors used to chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We just keep going. We're really, really good at not giving up. A Quillarian security guard approached nervously. Young one, perhaps you should rejoin your family. No, wait. Zixi turned to the guard, then back to the humans. I want to know more. Where did you come from? Like, how did you become so scary? Stanley offered with a grin. Strong, Zixi corrected. Brave. How do you live on a world like that and not be afraid all the time? Aaron knelt down, meeting all four of the child's eyes. You want to know the truth, Zixi? We are afraid sometimes. Fear is what kept our ancestors alive. But we learned something important. Being afraid doesn't mean you stop. It means you're smart enough to recognize danger, but brave enough to face it anyway. Earth made us problem solvers, Stanley added. Every challenge, every predator, every environmental hazard, they all taught us to adapt, to think, to never give up. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day, Erin continued, her voice soft but intense. We survived ice ages and droughts, plagues and predators. We climbed to the top of the food chain, not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we refused to quit. We worked together. We used our minds. Zixi was silent for a long moment, processing. Then, quietly, that's not scary. That's amazing. Erin smiled, and for the first time since the exhibit opened, she felt like maybe they were accomplishing something after all. You know what, Zixi? Stanley said. You're braver than most of the adults here. You walked right up and asked us questions instead of just staring. The Quillarian child beamed, his skin shifting to a pleased shade of turquoise. Will you tell me more stories? About Earth? Sure, Erin said. How about I tell you about the time humans went to our own moon, a giant rock floating in space, just to see if we could. As Zixi settled in to listen, more children began to approach the glass. Their parents protested, but the youngsters were undeterred. Within minutes, a dozen kids of various species sat before the exhibit, enraptured. And Erin and Stanley talked. They told stories of Everest expeditions and deep-sea dives, of the Voyager probes sailing beyond the solar system, of humanity's stubborn, relentless march toward the stars. They talked about where they came from, not a paradise, but a crucible, a beautiful, terrifying, deadly world that forged them into survivors, into explorers, into a species that looked at the impossible and said, "Watch us." When the zoo finally closed that evening, Zixi pressed his hand to the glass one last time. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Stanley. Come back anytime, buddy, Stanley called after him. As the lights dimmed, Erin returned to her book and Stanley to his workout bar. Tomorrow, more tourists would come. More children would ask questions. More beings would learn that humanity wasn't defined by fear, but by the courage to face it. And maybe, just maybe, the rest of the galaxy would understand humans didn't come from a death world. They came from home.